Welcome to another edition of Cattle Call, being brought to you by FNBO, the great big small bank. I'm Susan Littlefield. And interesting a week, we were just talking how the cattle on feed report seems so long ago when it really was just a few days ago. A lot of things have happened in the market in between then. We're going to talk about screwworm. We haven't had it in the U.S. since the 60s. But it is in Mexico, as we all know, and there's some concerns there, but some new information that came across early on a Wednesday morning. Cash is king. We're going to find out where is that cash going to sit as we head into this Thanksgiving Day holiday, as Brad Koima joins us with KKV Trading. And Brad, I think we got to start out. First of all, happy Thanksgiving to all of you guys there.
And to you as well, Susan, for sure. We have plenty to be thankful for. I'm thinking actually, I was thinking this morning, you get reflective a little bit. So my small community was ravaged by a 500-year flood. So I think a lot of our community is thinking they're especially thankful for first responders who, made a huge difference in our community for that. So, and I know you're one of those too in your own community. So lots to be thankful for.
Absolutely. So let's start out talking about that cattle on feed report, because it did come out Friday afternoon, very much a bearish report in its information. How do you see that setting the tone going into December?
Well, so I think just to spend a minute or so on it, so I think we can gain a little bit of perspective. The placement number was slightly bigger than expected. And that placement number was kind of going to be the tipping point of are we going to have a bigger number of cattle on feed in the United States than we did a year ago as of November 1. That number last year, kind of had everybody upside down because it turned out to be a new record number of cattle on feed. And we did beat that record just slightly. 11,986,000 this year, 11,956. I'm doing it from memory, but I think it was 30,000 head difference. So that's a number. Okay. I would also submit, though, do you remember any time there was a big bulge of supply of cattle this year in the first or second quarter? I know I don't. I think they flat missed the placement number last year, but notwithstanding, how do you get to a placement number like this? Well, a large amount of it, a big reason for it, Susan, was you saw a big uptick in the 5 and 6 weight cattle, 500 and 600 pound cattle placed in Texas and Kansas. And if you can remember, and I know you do, when we talked about it, when they had the big rain, that changed the whole dynamic of this feeder cattle market a couple of weeks ago. Well, so remember that most of this data is all pre that. Okay. So what you saw was a lack of wheat pasture, lack of regular pasture because it had been so dry. So these light cattle, which typically would have gone out in a graze out situation, came into a feedlot situation and got counted. So, did we all of a sudden, create more cattle out of the sky? Not at all. It's just that maybe they went to the feedlot earlier than expected, and they may still go back out to grass. I would bet that a large amount of them still do. So that's kind of the explanation behind the part of the reason why the placement number was as big as it was. So Monday morning, I would have said we'd have come in here 50 lower in the front, 150 lower in the back. But then, phrases you never thought you'd use on the air, right? New World screwworm story, which is liquid, it's fluid, it changes every day. And I don't know, you wanted me to plow right into what's new on the
Yeah, why don't you? Because I know here in the United States we haven't had it. I was reading up since the 60s it was eradicated here, but these cattle move quite freely back and forth across the border between the U.S. and Mexico. So what did you find out from APHIS this morning?
Okay, you're right. We had it, I believe, in 1966, eradicated using neutered flies. I don't know how you do that, but by golly, that's the way they did it. The latest from APHIS as of this morning now, late yesterday, was that they've been meeting with Mexican officials about protocol that has to be completed before they can resume moving stuff across the border. 3 weeks is mentioned in the article. There are things, obvious biosecurity things, open wounds, different things like that, relative health. But the big item is that everything will have to have ivermec. Okay. Which a lot of us farmer guys were going like, well, it's fly larvae. There are things you can do to treat that, and it seems like, this protocol is going to address that very thing. So whether it's exactly 3 weeks before the border comes back open, I can't tell you exactly, with the holidays thrown in there or whatever, but certainly the message I thought from USDA this morning was that this is a short-term issue, not a long-term issue. So I wouldn't be surprised The feeder cattle are down a little, but not severe. But I wouldn't be at all surprised. We put on a pretty good chunk here off of the Mexican border closing news. We may have to give a little of that back. The cash feeder market, of course, remains strong, but doesn't quite reflect just as much. We're very, very overbought, and to me, we've had a very, very fast rally on the feeder cattle. Be a little careful there, I would say.
Here we are into a holiday week. As you and I talk, Thanksgiving will hit us tomorrow, and then our focus will go from those turkeys and hams over to beef. But you're saying cash is king this week on a holiday trade.
Well, I'll go ahead and be dumb enough to stick my neck out. We ended up getting 188 last week, late in the week on a few cattle. I think we're going to get 190 this week, and I think it might happen before noon today. These packers are terrible busy. These buyers, they've got to have Friday off, apparently, to go to Black Friday sales or something. I'm being sarcastic. The feeling is that they're going to get their business done here today on the cash cattle. I think there's enough of the packers that are needing cattle. You got a short for a long. You got a packer that's making money. You got a whole shift now in the demand thing. You hinted at it, talking about you're going to move away from the turkey ham feature now to what are we going to have for Christmas dinner? What are we going to have for the office party? How about New Year's? This is a very, very typical time now where you move this feature back toward the middle meats or the tenderloin, the ribeyes, the strips, the high price cuts. And the hamburger side of the market's enjoyed great demand the whole time through this whole thing. So I think you're going to have a packer that's going to need to play ball. The show lists in the north are very small. We're starting to get past people that know what I'm talking about here. I apologize if you don't, but you got farmer feeders that tend to feed a set of calves for quite a while, and then when they sell them, then they're out for quite a while. Sometimes those cattle, especially when the weather's been this mild, sometimes those cattle get a little big, as we've seen. So those weights have been big, but there's a bit of a story on that weight thing too, Susan.
So speaking of these weights, we've had decent growing conditions for these guys. We really haven't had that adverse extreme cold and snow moving through. But how tight is the South? I had read yesterday that there's a lot of cattle leaving Nebraska and Iowa, and they're headed to Texas to be processed.
They definitely are. Speak from personal experience. Actually, all the way from Northwest Iowa down to Texas, and the packer's paying the freight. Okay. Packer wouldn't do that unless he absolutely had to. So he's chasing two things. He's chasing just raw supply, but he's also chasing cattle that'll grade, which of course these long fed calves will grade their tail off. Okay. But that's not bearish. I've also heard of cattle from here go into Colorado to die. So also not bearish. As you get these regional imbalances in supply, you gain leverage for the producer without a doubt. And on this weight topic, Susan, the data this morning, which is the ink's hardly dry on it. This is our second week in a row now where the weights have tipped over. Okay, they're still higher than last year, but this regional weights that we look at is a little more comprehensive and a little quicker turning than what that other weight data is, which is 2 weeks old by the time you get it. Texas and Kansas especially. Iowa has always kind of been average. It's high, but it's right in that normal range of what the weights have been the last 5 years. So I've been waiting for the South to tip over a little bit on that, which I'm really encouraged by, and it should this time of year. The weights should start to roll over now as we get through those long fed cattle. So we shall see if we could get that's the one kind of the boogeyman deal, right? The smoke in the room of, why are these weights so stinking big? And we've talked about that. Part of it's a need for supply. You got less cattle, they're going to make them bigger to fill up the needs for supply. But I'd be even more friendly than I am if we could get those weights back in line.
So as we wrap up today's show, tariffs and cattle, do you see any concerns?
I feel like this whole topic is probably above my pay grade, Susan, but
mine too.
Yeah. I guess I could start by being me, which is usually making some sarcastic comment, attempt at humor. One of our ag markets here that is very, very directly tied to exports is hogs. right? Something like 22 or 23% of the hogs we raise go to China specifically. Okay. A lot of the pork product that we don't like anymore, hams, shoulders, stuff like that, that's hard to move, goes to Mexico. Okay. Well, you know, those are the two of the three countries that have been targeted, you know, in this, all the commentary from this new administration. And hogs just made new contract highs again this morning. So they don't seem to be bothered about it. However, I guess I'll try to answer your question. Stock market strong. You know, that's one monitor of beef demand typically, you know, as everybody sees that as being somewhat elastic, right? You know, you got to feel like you can afford it. That seems to me to be a little positive. If indeed we get into a full blast scale tariff war, I suppose the cattle at some point are going to be impacted. I don't think the market's telling me that, though. The market does not seem to be worried about that. I'm afraid it's of greater concern to like the corn and the beans, and especially the beans. But I don't know. I remember a really guy that I had a tremendous amount of respect for. I used to always say, don't ride last year's horse in this year's race. And so I wonder, you know, for us to sit back and go, well, let's see, in 2016, it happened just like this. And so that's why it's going to happen exactly like that again. That seems to be a little bit of a layup, and I doubt that it usually is that easy. So let's hope not.
Well, Brad, I appreciate your time. Wishing you guys a very, very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy time with the family, and we will catch you on next week's episode.
Sounds good. And you as well. Take care.
Thank you. Quickly, though, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, yeah. We got a phone yet. 712-722-0023, or you can sure look us up at kkvtrading.com.
All right, that has been this week's Cattle Call. Quick reminder, commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss, not suitable to all investors. And that's another edition of the Cattle Call right here on the Rural Radio Network.